Thank you all for joining us this afternoon to go over information specific to hiring graduate assistants, as well as some other odds and ends that we have thought about sharing with you. I have Mackenzie with me this afternoon, and so as I go through the presentation, I will be primarily giving information, and then Mackenzie is going to interject at appropriate times to share some insights that he's gained from working with different program coordinators and admins through this process over the past year. So as a overview, and let me get my cursor going, of what we're talking about today, we see this session in three parts. Meeting minimum wage expectations, which much of this information in that particular part, if you've attended this overview session or this session before, will not be new, so it'll be a repeat for some of you. But then as we move into GA paperwork, there's definitely some new things that have occurred in the past year. And then, of course, our odds and ends, there's some fascinating information in there that we're really excited to share with you. So there are new pieces, even if you've sat through this before. So to get started, when it comes to meeting minimum wage expectations, there's three broad topics that we will share with you this afternoon. Oh, and I forgot to say, as we go through this, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature of the webinar, and then we'll be able to answer your questions at the end. So meeting minimum wage, first, we'll start with graduate assistantship or graduate assistant types that we have here on the campus of UCA. So we actually have four different types. First is a GTA, or graduate teaching assistant. Graduate teaching assistants are people who are assigned primarily instructional duties. So they're in the classroom. They don't have to be the instructor of record. They could be assigned to help a faculty member in a class. But whatever it is they're assigned to, it's related to teaching, and that's what designates it as a GTA. We also have graduate research assistants. Graduate research assistants are going to be people who are devoting the majority of their time to some research endeavor. We have two GAs here in the graduate school who are actually classified as graduate research assistants. We are working very hard to try to develop a research agenda around graduate education here at UCA. So that is a research project that they're engaged in. We also have graduate assistants that work for housing, and so we refer to them as GARs, graduate assistants residential. Trying to distinguish them and their responsibilities is slightly different from the others. And then our fourth category is graduate administrative assistants, or GAAs. And so these are individuals who are primarily performing administrative type responsibilities in their offices. So I believe we have like GAAs that might be in the diversity office, for example. I don't know that that's a fact, but they do have GAs, and they might be GAAs depending on what they're doing. The key to these classifications is that the student's responsibilities, the majority of those, and by majority, our human resources department defines that as 60% of their time is spent engaged in those types of activities. So if you are a GTA, at least 60% of your assignment should be related to teaching. So that means that if you need a GTA to sit down and answer a phone for the afternoon, or maybe perhaps make some copies, that's fine, but the majority of their time should be spent in these particular areas of responsibility, and those responsibilities should grow them professionally. Like, they should be matched to their discipline so that we could argue, if anyone ever questioned, yes, this graduate student is in an assistantship, and that assistantship is preparing them professionally in this way. So those are some things to keep in mind as it relates to GA types. But then another question is, why does it matter, right? Why does it matter that we know what type of GA a student is? And primarily, a lot of this sits around the Fair Labor Standards Act and the fact that the way our university interpreted the Fair Labor Standards Act is that GAAs, which are the administrative assistants, are non-exempt, whereas the other three types of GAs, GTAs, GRAs, GARs, are exempt according to Fair Labor Standards Act. And where this gets a little tricky is that because the GAAs are not exempt, they have to meet minimum wage. And as you know, the minimum wage in Arkansas has gone up each of the past few years. And so that caused an increase in our minimum salaries for GAs. So we have to be able to document fairly easily through Banner that our GAAs are meeting minimum wage. And then at the same time, we want the other GAs to show that too, because we wouldn't want one group we could argue that we can meet it, and another group that we're like, I don't know. So holding everybody to those same salary expectations allows us to meet minimum wage. The other piece related to being non-exempt is that for GAAs, they have to, or we have to track their hours worked per week. So if a GAA is supposed to be working 20 hours a week, then someone needs to be tracking those hours. That information is expected to be collected at the department level and maintained at the department. So if you have a GAA, those hours tracked should be a part of your records. If they came to the graduate school looking for those, we will not have those. We will send them to the department. And then related, in order for us to make sure that GAAs are meeting the minimum wage, and we did a lot of number crunching on the front end to make this all work out, we have to separate out their time worked so that we are not paying them over the holiday break between fall and spring semesters. So for a GAA, we ask that on their PAF, or their personnel action form, that they have a fall start and end date and a spring start and end date. And I'll share those dates in just a second. Whereas for the other GAAs, you should have just one set of start and end dates. So August something through May something. But again, because of the GAAs and having to meet minimum wage, we need to separate out those dates so that we're not paying them over that holiday break. And then the results of that, and this is why it becomes really important to communicate to students what type of assistantship they're on, is that a GAA will not receive a check on December 31st, whereas the other types of GAs do receive a check on December 31st. So again, it's important to communicate that to students because they have to obviously plan ahead in terms of budgeting their monies. Some people might argue that that's like, they may think that because the GTAs and so forth are receiving an extra check that they're making more money, and they're actually not. So if you have two graduate assistants, one that's a GAA and one that's a GTA, if they're paid the same salary, then what happens is the GAAs will receive one less check, but then all the checks they do get are a little bit larger, right? So imagine they both have the same pot of money that they're earning. It's just one is spread out in fewer checks, so their checks will be a little bit larger. So all of that is information that needs to be shared with graduate assistants. In terms of those start and end dates, the other piece to us being able to easily argue that we're meeting minimum wage is by having uniform or almost uniform start dates. So for GTAs, GRAs, and GARs who are employed continuously for fall and spring semester, then they should have a start date of August 1st or August 16th, and then an end date of May 15th. You can compare that to GAAs, where I've already said we're going to split their time worked. And their timelines are, again, you see that August 1st or 16th start date, but now it's going to end on December 15th. And then in the spring, we will pick up on January 1st or 16th and run through May 15th. Mackenzie, you're going to have to wave at me if there's any time when you're ready to jump in. Okay.
Okay. I'm about to actually.
Okay. So, a common question is, well, if I have a student who starts on August the 1st, do they have to literally be here on August the 1st? No. But so you could have them start on August the 5th or August the 10th. That part doesn't matter. But our university is only going to have you allow you to start them on August 1st or 16th. So if you have them starting on August 5th, then you need an August 1st start date. Okay, they don't want you to say start them on the 10th and have an August 16th start date. That's not right. So they are okay with you starting them and them having work days where they're not working, but they're not okay with them having work days or non-work days where they are working. I may have just really confused y'all on that, but the point is they have to start working after a hire date, not before a hire date. Okay. And
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mackenzie.
And this is one of the most common questions that I have from departments or admins who are putting together recommendation forms to hire these graduate assistants. And, you know, they might have August 16th as the start date, but they're saying, well, we want them to come in a couple days the week before. Is this okay to keep it as August the 16th? And the answer to that is no, it would have to be an August 1st start date if they even come in one day before that August 16th start date.
Very good, very good. One thing that we did learn early on when we started these uniform dates, I'll come back to summer in a second, is that part of a new hire is that the person has to complete the I-9 verification process. And that process has to be, it can be completed anytime before a start date, but then it must be completed no later than 3 days following the start date. So if you list an August 1st start date, but they're not showing up till August 5th, well, then we've missed that 3 days if they haven't done it beforehand. So be mindful that students need to complete the I-9 verification form or process within that time frame. I do believe it can be done remotely. And so if a student wanted to do it ahead of time, but couldn't come here to UCA, then they just need to contact HR about how to do that remotely. And then the piece on this little timeline part that I skipped for summer start and end dates, we don't have certain start and end dates. We ask that you just literally put whatever the start and end dates are for the work, and we don't try to keep all that together because there's so much variation in what different departments need in the summer. So in terms of minimum stipend amounts, this information should look just like it did last year because we had already planned with an 11-hour minimum wage amount. And so this should look just like it did. These numbers are based on a full assistantship. So you'll see that for both groups, we've put $8,600 for the academic year. For GAAs, that will be split according to your fall and spring dates that you've given, but it's still covering both semesters. For GTAs, GRAs, and GARs, again, it's $8,600 for the academic year. That's fall and spring. If you have them working into June, then this minimum amount needs to go up, and it should be calculated in a way so that the minimum wage is met. So both groups, $8,600, that's the minimum. Now a department can pay more, but this is the minimum amount. And so when we combine this minimum amount with the start and end dates, then we know we're meeting minimum wage expectations, and therefore we are in compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. For summer, so when you get into summer, you'll just need, because you've given us specific start and end dates on the PAF, you'll have to calculate the pay based on the number of weeks, the number of hours worked per week, and then paying at least $11 per hour. I think that's all I have on this section. Mackenzie, do you want to add anything at this point?
I don't think I have for this section.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we'll go to the second section. So GA paperwork, timelines, digital forms, things to remember. Some of this is old news, some of this is new and exciting. So timelines, here are our timelines or preferred deadlines for submitting paperwork. You'll notice that if you have GA paperwork for summer, that deadline's coming up April the 15th. It's just a couple of weeks away. If you have students that are returning for fall semesters, so they are GAs right now, and you know they're coming back for the fall, we should go ahead and be processing that paperwork. So we've also put April 15th there as well. For new students coming in to start in the fall in an assistantship, we've got July 1st, And of course, our spring date is November 1st. The thing about these timelines is that Mackenzie and I are here today to beg you to please meet these deadlines. Please. They're not hard deadlines, right? If somebody comes in on July 31st and says, I've got this new student, here's our GA paperwork, we are not going to turn you away. But what can happen is there are delays. Our office is obviously understaffed, and there are moments where we just cannot drop what we're doing to process GA paperwork. And if that happens at the wrong time, we're looking at an instance where a student might not get their initial paycheck when they think they're getting it. So these deadlines are in place to ensure that we're getting everything processed so that students are paid and on time. And they're put in this place so that we can manage our workflows that include, like Mackenzie does way more than just graduate assistantships. So again, these are soft deadlines, but we really want you to take them on as kind of being hard deadlines, right? Mackenzie, you want to add to that?
Any help with making sure that the paperwork is turned in a timely manner would be helpful for me in my position. I'm pretty good about getting these things processed when they come into my office if it's a complete application. But there are times when, especially hiring for the fall and the summer at the same time, that it can get a little backed up. So if you could try to abide by these dates if at all possible, it would be awesome.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Let's see. Oh, so last year, this time we were talking about we might have some digital forms coming. Now we do. So we just want to touch base on the different forms that are a part of the hiring process. First of all, we have the GA recommendation form, which that is a form that the graduate school uses. And so that is for both new hires and rehires for graduate assistants. You can find that form on the graduate school website. It's simply a fillable PDF. You should be able to fill it out and do digital signatures if signatures and all are needed. We do have sometimes people say, I can't get this thing to work. And that means either you need to download the form or you need to use not such a fancy Adobe Acrobat reader. But you should be able to use those forms, and we prefer digital. Like, we are modern people in the graduate school. We try to be, right, Mackenzie?
Yes, it's all possible.
So we want digital forms, and you can send the GA recommendation forms to Mackenzie so that he can start that process. For rehires, so you have a graduate assistant that's being rehired, then you'll use the university's digital PAF form that is handled through DocuSign. And y'all have probably seen this form already, and so many of you have used it. But simply you go to the HR website, there's a PAF tab, and then under originate a form, you click on that and it'll get you started with that. Key to success with that is that you be sure to check that it is a graduate assistant. So see that little box with the X there, we need to make sure that that is checked, because if we don't, then there is a chance that there will be delays in processing. So please make sure that if you're hiring a GA that you check that box. And if it's a new hire, we're hiring through People Admin, and that's another system that most of our administrative assistants are familiar with, but it will be through People Admin, and you want to make sure there that you're also checking that it's a graduate assistant so that it gets routed through our office as well.
Something else with People Admin is if you are not sure of the individual you're wanting to hire for the assistantship, so you're wanting to advertise the position across campus before you choose a candidate, you'll also advertise it and through People Admin as well.
Okay, thank you. Some things to remember. The dollar amounts and all that I shared today were based on a full assistantship, so that's 20 hours a week. If you are hiring a student for a half assistantship, then you simply would prorate that amount. So it would be $4,300 for the year. And then if you're wanting to hire assistants, graduate assistants on other percentages, then let's have a discussion about that. There are some departments that do that, but really my goal is for all of our graduate assistants to either be half or full assistantships. And right now that may not matter, but looking ahead towards hopefully one day having tuition remission, it would matter. So I'm trying to like plan things now that will work in the future. So again, it's just a discussion we can have, and we'll talk about that. And then GA recommendation form is needed in order to advance a PAF. So we have to have that. I think Mackenzie would like to get those as soon as you know who you want to hire. Correct, Mackenzie?
Absolutely. The thing is, if you can get me the recommendation form, I can go ahead and review that and approve the student for the assistantship. So when the PAF does get to me, gets through the signature chain to my email, then I can just, verify that information is the same on the recommendation and send it on forward. Whereas if I get the PAF first, I have to wait to get the recommendation, approve that, get the email to the student before I can go forward with the PAF. So it makes it much quicker for everybody involved.
Okay. And although this doesn't have to do with hiring, we did want to take a moment to say if you have students who are perhaps graduating, so they're not returning, then please be sure to process a termination PAF. Many of us get a little email in the fall that says, hey, what happened to these people? And we could avoid that if we do our termination PAF. So graduate assistants, when they graduate, do not get automatically terminated. So we have to process termination PAFs.
So
go ahead.
I'd like to say one thing about the termination PAFs. This is a little bit of a spoiler alert for what Dr. Barlow is about to talk about next, I believe. But another reason that these termination PAFs are so key that we also get those is because we now have a graduate or a GA tracking system in Banner. And the way that I inactivate a current GA who maybe they've graduated and gone on is through the termination PAF. Once I get that, I take that information and go to their place in the tracking module and inactivate their profile, and it takes them out of our list of current graduate assistants.
Talk about a spoiler alert, Mackenzie. So now we're down to odds and ends. And so these are just some things that we want to take advantage of a moment that we have together and share some of the things going on here in the graduate school that affect your work. So this is in the past, and that's person is you, the program coordinator or the administrative assistant, and you might have had a question and you wondered in your head, something like, I wonder if Jeff is a GA. And, back in the past, you would probably pick up your phone, which notice I used a rotary phone as my example. And then you'd call us over here in the graduate school and you would ask your question, is Jeff a GA? And we would say, let me check my spreadsheet, because we did everything in spreadsheets. And so now we have, and this is where the spoiler alert came in, we have a Banner GA tracking module. So this actually took us a couple of years to get up and going, which is a ridiculously long time, but we're so glad to have it. But what it allows us to do is have GA information in Banner so that anyone who can access Banner can access the information. So there are two screens that are involved in this. This screen, SGA ASTQ, is going to have a general list of UCA GAs that are active, and it can be filtered. And we're going to show you a brief video in just a second of what these look like in action. And then the second screen is SGA ASST, and it holds the information from the GA recommendation form. So these screens together allow you to access GA information. So if you have a question, if you're wondering what their source of funding is, like what account is their assistantship being paid out of, if you're just any of that type of information where you imagined having to call the graduate school or call someone to ask, then that now is in Banner and can be accessed. So on the next slide, Mackenzie's going to talk through, and let me preface this by saying we have a short video that Mackenzie's going to talk through that shows how what these two screens look like, and it's going to show like actual student data. When we take this recording and share it more broadly, we're cutting out that piece, and so the piece that we're about to show that has student information in there will not be a part of the recorded piece. Okay, so Mackenzie, are you ready to talk through this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So this video is about accessing these screens. So we'll start with the regular Banner page, the front page on Banner, and you'll go to the SGAASTQ page. And once you're there, this will be a listing of all current graduate assistants at UCA. You can further filter this by program In this instance, I believe I used the history department as the example, their master's degree. When you filter this, it will list only graduate assistants that are specific to that program or your program. You can click on this student and then go to, I believe, I can't see it in the video actually, but it will take you to the SGAAST screen, which this is the screen that will have all of the information specific to that student. So this is everything that's on the recommendation form that you all will be sending over to the graduate school. You can go to more information, and it will also have the account that they're being paid out of and the number of hours that they're working. So once the recommendation form is sent over to the graduate school, all this data on this digital document is input manually into the system. And I do make mistakes from time to time. So this is just another way for you as a program coordinator or an admin to check to make sure that what is on the recommendation form that you all are sending over is correct information. Or if you don't have the recommendation form for some reason anymore, you can go into this screen and find out that information.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So it really seems like the GA tracking module is replacing the spreadsheets that we had, and it's putting it into Banner so that everybody has access. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so the GA tracking module, we're very excited about that. Another thing, so here we are again in the past. So this is you on the left, a program coordinator or a faculty member that says, hi, are you interested in graduate school? And then we have the person over here that says, yes, they're very much interested. And so we say, great, let me write down your information. And we get out pencil and paper and we write down that information. And then the student walks away and wonders, what's going to happen with that. And, I know I've been guilty of taking down information and then just not being able to follow up with that student in a timely manner and left that student wondering. So this is not a good communication plan for recruiting students before they apply. But now we have Slate. And so you all know Slate as an application system, and I hope that you all are finding your way through it and finding it very helpful and beneficial. But Slate is way much more than an application system. And so our next step, our next phase is to build out a communication plan for moving a student from a moment where they express interest through to application. And so I want to share with you, it's going to be pretty wordy, but I do want to share with you kind of the contents of this communication plan. And you will see places where we're probably going to have to talk to you about your particular program. So this communication plan is built out so that as soon as a student submits an online information request form, they'll get an immediate email from the graduate school that just confirms that we've received their request for information. They'll also receive an email that looks like it's coming from the program. So it's coming from Slate, so it's automatic, but it looks like it's coming from the program. And we can put things in the program like the number of hours in the program, which doesn't sound very exciting. The mode of instruction, which that is something that students want to know up front, like is this online, a hybrid, or an on-campus program? But then we can also put program highlights. And so this is where we'll have to talk to you all to find out what is it that you think might capture their interest about your program. So that email coming from the program will highlight pieces that you think are important for them to be aware of. Then we plan like week 2, so the next week, they'll get an email from the graduate school that's about completing the application process. So just general information about how do you apply, how do you move forward with that. And then shortly thereafter, a couple of weeks later, we have the applicant receiving an email from the program. So again, it's automatic. It's not literally coming from the program, but it looks like it is. And so you all can help us to tailor those so that they look and provide information unique to your program. And then in week 6, we plan to send a text. So the graduate school can now text. We're very excited about that. That ask if they'd like to schedule a meeting with an admissions specialist to discuss the application process. So far they haven't actually talked to a person unless they reached out and scheduled it, but this would be an invitation from us to do so. And we can set up other emails as a part of this communication plan. So for example, if your program has an upcoming deadline, perhaps you're a program that has a deadline of October 1st for your applications. So we could fix that so that your program people who are interested in it get an extra email that says, don't forget, there's an October 1st deadline for this application. Similarly, if your program has some type of monthly newsletter or program updates, then we can add that into this so that if a person has applied, for example, to the biology program, well, then wouldn't it be really cool if they got an email that said, hey, here's our monthly biology newsletter. And in it, it's highlighting things that the students, both undergraduate and graduate students, are engaged in. That's a very nice recruiting tool. So we are in the process of building out kind of the template aspects of this communication plan. And then we'll be reaching out to program coordinators and faculty and department chairs to say, hey, how can we tailor this to your program? So we're very excited about the potential for using Slate in this way. It goes a long way from the old days of writing down information on a piece of paper and putting in spreadsheets. And then the third odds and ends that I wanted to share is our Graduate Student Appreciation Week. So this is a nationally celebrated week. It's always the first week of April. First full week of April. And guess what? That's next week. So April 5th through April 9th is Graduate Student Appreciation Week. If you all do nothing else, just acknowledge that it's Graduate Student Appreciation Week and tell your graduate students that you think they're wonderful and you appreciate all that they do for your program and for the university. We are doing our work this time, again, just like we did last year, through social media. So I ask that if you are on social media that you follow us so that you can keep up with what we're doing. We have several different activities planned. A few weeks ago, we asked programs to nominate a student to represent their program. So those students who were nominated and who have replied will be featured. I forget how many different students will feature each day. I'm hoping that we have videos, but it might just be a picture. But we're trying to recognize students, and in doing so, recognize our programs. We'll also have daily giveaways. I know that we've got like some nice giveaways from maybe the bookstore, and we're trying to get some gift certificates from restaurants. So we'll have daily giveaways for those people who go on and like and share or comment on our social media. We are doing a mindfulness session for graduate students. You all may be aware that John Scott Kelly does mindfulness Mondays. Today's, well, we probably just missed it. Yep, it's 12:30. We just missed it. But he does those each Monday for faculty and staff. Well, he's also doing them for graduate students. I think we have one on Wednesday of this week, but we definitely have one on Tuesday of next week at 2 o'clock. And then I guess the culminating activity to the week, which is a little scary to me, is yoga with the dean. So I don't yoga, I jazzercise, but I'm going to yoga on Friday, April 9th at 5 o'clock. Location still yet to be determined. And please encourage your students or yourself, come join us. I don't know what y'all normally do on Friday at 5 o'clock. I know I don't do yoga normally on Friday at 5 o'clock, but I'm excited about participating. So those are some of our activities. Again, it's really just saying out loud for a whole week, we have graduate students. Our graduate students are wonderful and we appreciate them. So celebrating our graduate students. To kick off the week, we have started our own podcast. So we have the graduate school, we have a podcast called Grad Chats with Dr. B. And our first episode is, it's already available on all the different platforms, wherever you access your podcast. And it is an interview with the provost. So Patricia Poulter sat down with me a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about some of her background, but then gearing in towards graduate education. And so I hope that if you're a podcast listener that you'll follow our podcast. I'm hoping over the next few weeks to have episodes done with like different deans, and then connecting those podcasts to our communication plan that I was talking a moment ago, just trying to get students to see us as different, see us as something that's really worth investigating and wanting to come to graduate school here at UCA. So those are some of the odds and ends of things that we have going on here at the graduate school. And so that ends my formal presentation. And so now I can take questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see our questions. And I've got one. But I can't understand what it's saying. It's got a whole bunch of like computer jargon. So that's not really a question. I'm not sure what to do with that. So I'll just pause for a second. I see we've got some chats. Let's see what's happening in the chat. Yes, we're recording this. It'll be on YouTube. Let's see. So one question that we have, and this goes back to classifying graduate assistants. And so if it's, the question is, would a tutor who's not in a classroom but in a tutoring lab be considered a GTA? And my answer to that would be yes, that's an instructional type responsibility. So I would say yes, that would be a GTA, absolutely. Next question. Does the banner system show how much they have been actually paid? And can you view pay per pay period?
The answer to does the banner system show how much they have actually been paid is no. The only thing that it does show is the actual salary that was allotted for the student on the recommendation form.
So that type of information is held with HR and not available to us to look at. We'd have to still call and get that, or people would have to call and get that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The other part of this question was about how much is left in our GA budget line. That info, people would call Patty. Mackenzie keeps up with all of that. So that type of information. So if you're allotted, X amount of money and you've spent out and you want to know how much you have left in your GA line, Mackenzie can do, you still have to pick up your rotary phone and call and call Mackenzie on that. Okay, we're getting some more questions. Let's see. Oh, that's kind of, this question is, the PAF isn't needed for returning GA students on April 15th, right? Only the GA recommendation form.
Yes.
Okay. Graduate assistants are the same as research assistants in terms of the processes. Yes, so the processes for hiring and all graduate assistants are going to be the same. Different type, you have to designate what type of assistantship it is, whether it's a GTA or a GRA or a GAA, correct, Mackenzie?
Yes, that's
on
correct.
The forms, but it's the same
Yes.
forms used for each. Yes,
Same
absolutely.
form. It just you mark whichever different designation it is.
Okay. All right. Summer recommendation forms. Do they need to have a start date of the 1st or the 16th? Or does it have to be the start and end date of a summer session?
Usually it's either the 1st or the 16th still. Summer ones can get a little wacky just because of the way the summer is, but usually it's still the 1st or the 16th.
Okay.
Like if it's for summer, maybe summer one, they just usually do from June 1st to June the 30th.
Okay, here's another one. Oh, this is a great question. The question is, if minimum wage changes and goes up, are there plans to increase the assistantship amounts, or will our need to be adjusted down, or will need to be adjusted downward? So just like what happened with the current, when the current minimum wage amount went up, we had to pay our people more, and we were not given more money to do that with. So that isn't on the one hand, I mean, it has forced us to pay our graduate assistants more, which they are still woefully underpaid. But it's, it's a bad situation from the department perspective, because you could potentially go from like 4 graduate assistants to 3, just depending. So there are not plans right now to increase departmental budgets for graduate assistants through our department. through the graduate school budget. I certainly always advocate for more money. These days, no one's giving us anything extra. So that's an unfortunate situation for us to be in, but that is it. Other questions? Here's one. So this is about graduate assistants who might begin in the spring and what their start dates are. So if a graduate student begins in the spring semester, then their start date would be either January 1st or January 16th. We do have some instances where, a person's hiring is delayed, and so maybe they don't start until February. Well, we wouldn't in February go back and put a start date of January. So there's a little bit of flexibility in that. And we would mark February 1st or 16th. But in general, if you know a student's going to be here for a semester, it's that 1st or 16th of that first month. So a spring only assistantship would start in January 1st or 16th. These are all very good questions. Okay, here's one. Okay, so the question, I came in, Gia already here. So this person is new in her position. And so she's walked in and she already has a graduate assistant. And so now she's wondering about summer months and for fall of 2021. So I think one thing that you would want to do is try to access the GA tracking module and banner to see what the end dates are for the GA that's currently in the position. Because it may be that that person's contract has already been done for at least the first part of the summer. So find out what is in the system right now for that GA. And then once you have that information, you'll be better prepared to move forward with summer. You'll want to contact McKinsey to see how much money is left in your GA line. Sometimes departments use all of their GA money in fall and spring. And so then anything for summer is coming from a departmental budget, which you may have. But you should talk with McKinsey to find out how much money's left in your GA budget for the summer. And then he can also tell you what your fall or next academic year budget will look like so that you can plan and build out that the PAFs accordingly. Good questions. Okay, we'll see if we get any more questions. Okay, while we're not getting any, let me just say that McKinsey is here. So even though we have these new systems where you can find information without calling us, please know that you can call and ask questions. We have phone hours in our office. Remember, I said we're understaffed. And so the only way we can get things done is to not answer the phone for certain times. So if you are trying to reach us, during our phone hours, which are on our website, we'll answer the phone during that time. Outside of that time, please email us. And if it's an emergency, email and say, hey, it's an emergency, please call me, and we'll give you a call. But we're still here, and McKinsey's very willing to answer questions and work with you, whatever it takes to get these students hired and on track and doing good things. I'll stop talking now and say thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Again, this will be edited and then put on our YouTube channel. And if you have questions and all, please follow up with us. Thanks again.